Who's made mistakes in life? I know I've made plenty of mistakes in my own life. In this video, I share 5 money mistakes I wish I knew in my 20s. And stay to the end where I share the biggest mistake I wish I knew and what to do so you don't make the same mistake. Hi everyone, I'm Jessica and I love talking about financial freedom after experiencing burnout early on in my pharmacist career. On the channel, I talk about passive income and simplifying. You can also watch my video on how I burned out in pharmacy and how we paid off massive student loans. Make sure to watch those videos as well. The first money mistake I made in my 20s was not contributing to my Roth IRA at a young age. Anytime we start working and making money, we have the option to contribute to our Roth IRA retirement fund. And when I started working as a teenager, I never contributed to it. I had no idea what it was. Then I was working in college in my undergraduate and my graduate time. And then during pharmacy school, I was working as an intern pharmacist. And if I would have been contributing to this fund early on in my teenage years and my 20s, it would have grown significantly over those 10 years because of the power of compounding. And, nowadays we have the option to contribute about $6,000 to our Roth IRA each year. And I wish that I would have known this in my 20s. So please make sure if you have this option and are making an income that you're considering as one of your retirement funds early on, you can spread it out over the year and contribute $500 a month, or you can front load it with a full $6,000 lump sum. It's really up to you, but make sure that if it is an option for you, that you start contributing it and investing that money. The next money mistake I made was not maxing out my work 401k during pharmacy residency. And I didn't have the option of a work 401k during my teenage years, during my part-time jobs, my work study, or during my pharmacist intern position because I was a part-time employee. But during my residency over 2 years, I had the option to have a work 401k and contribute to my employer match or contribute to the yearly contribution limits that are set by the government. And I didn't do either of those. And not contributing to the employer match was literally leaving money on the table. I could have contributed over 10% to my employer match, and it would have been free money that I just didn't have. So I really regret having that decision. So I really encourage you to know your employer match and to contribute at least to the employer match, if not to contribute to the yearly contribution limits that the government sets each year. Missing out on that money, it would have grown significantly due to the power of compounding over the last 10 years. And it's something that I wish I would have known in my 20s. My next money mistake was keeping too much money in cash. Yes, I kept cash in my checking and my traditional savings account, and then finally opened up a high yield savings account with a little more interest on that. But I kept so much of my money in cash. I was keeping it to save up for a house down payment and just keeping a lot on hand over time, much more than the traditional 3 to 6 months of expenses or even the 12 months of expenses. And over time, I could have used that money and put it into investment accounts, maxing out my Roth IRA, my work 401k, and my taxable brokerage account. And looking back, I wish I would have known how to invest in index funds and different things so that I wasn't keeping so much money in cash just sitting in a bank account. And I think that as long as you're not going to be using the cash in the next 3 to 5 years, we can invest it instead. So I learned in my 30s how to open up a taxable brokerage account and invest the money I wasn't using immediately. And it's something that I wish I would have known in my 20s so that I could have been able to invest more money, have it grow much quicker than having it sit in a checking account or a very low savings account as well. If you'd like to know what high yield savings accounts I use, those links are in the description as well. The next money mistake I made was spending a lot of money on frivolous and luxury goods that either I no longer use, I don't have a big use for them, or it just feels that I wasted a lot of money. And a couple of examples that come to mind are the small laptop. I really wanted a really small laptop. I think it was less than 10 inches during my undergraduate years to fit on this really small desk that a lot of classrooms had. And we spent over $500 on this small laptop. I used it for 1 or 2 years, and then it became obsolete because of technology. And it was something that it wasn't an investment over time. Buying my MacBook Pro, I kept it for about 9 years and was able to repair it and add in a new hard drive. And that was a much better investment that lasted 8-9 years before it stopped working as well for video editing and things. So just thinking about frivolous purchases that weren't very intentional. I also can think about my shopping addiction. I talked about this significantly on my burnout story video and on how I had a shopping addiction, how I converted my shopping addiction into a clothing budget. You can watch that video as well. And I think that looking back, it's something that I went through to cope with burnout. It was a stage in my life and I have learned from that stage, but something that I wish I would have been much more intentional with of how I shopped and how I consumed. I also spent money on frivolous things like outdoor furniture that was really expensive from Pottery Barn that really was not needed and did not wear very well over time either. And it's just something that, looking back, if I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on something, it has to have a purpose. And I share it in this video about my 5 best investments over time. And some of those purchases were great investments, and these other things were really frivolous luxury goods that weren't really needed in my life. My next money mistake was only relying on one income. And I know a lot of us do this in our life. We're taught to have this great job, stay at it for years, have that pension, have that loyalty to that one company. But nowadays in 2022, it's really rare to have a company you stay at for 20, 30, 40 years like our previous generation. And relying on one income is really unstable and really like gambling. So, I relied on one income when I was in pharmacy residency and during my first year in academia. And now I have extended it to over 7 sources of income. Some of those incomes are passive incomes. And I share how I have accumulated different types of income and passive income in this video. So you can watch that video as well. And I think that over time, it's really important that we diversify our income streams so that we're not reliant on one company and, one source of income for our stability and for, the stress that it could cause in our own life, because the financial stress it causes is significant. What is the biggest mistake I made in my 20s related to money? I think the biggest mistake was relying on one income source. And I know this is the status quo in the United States, and I really want you to push the boundaries and think outside the box of how you can diversify your income streams, feel less stress related to financial well-being, and feel that you're making money while you sleep. And I think that's really important. Make sure you're taking action in our videos and downloading our resources below, watching our other videos on financial freedom. Until next time, cultivate joy.